Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where we have real conversations about building confidence, breaking barriers, and creating wealth, one bold move at a time. I am your co host, Jocelyn Turner, and today's episode is all about something that affects every part of our lives, but doesn't always get the open, honest conversation it deserves: women and finance. Today, we're diving into how women can build, protect, and grow their wealth, take control of their financial futures, and shift the mindset around money from fear to power. Of course, I cannot do the podcast, nor do I try to do it alone. Joining me as co host is Dr. Rogers Kane. How are you doing this evening, Dr. Kane?
I am doing great. Um, and of course, me being surrounded by women with five ladies in the family, five ladies that are my kids, one knucklehead, uh, like me. He's like me, a knucklehead. Well, five ladies and their mom, and then I got four sisters. I am very interested in a podcast like this. I am very uh, happy that we can address this subject matter, although it's probably going to be a whole lot of overlap with what men need to get done themselves.
All right, I couldn't phrase it any clearer, but well, thank you, Dr. Kane, and welcome. And you didn't say neither of us said anything about the weather, did we? So how about I open it up with a funny thing, other than saying, talking really about the weather before we get into the conversation. I'll ask our podcast host, guest, I should say, Leah Bush and Dr. Kane. Feel free to answer it. But if your current money mindset were a weather report, what would it be? Sunny skies, light showers, or thunderstorms?
Thunderstorm for me because of what's going on in DC. So I'm looking for some bright new sun just above the clouds and emerging, the sun emerging above the clouds, like you see on a fan doing church, you know what, where you got the great look of the majestic look, the holy look of the Lord coming to the rescue. We need to see that in that weather report you're talking about.
What about you, Leah? Welcome to this is your first time on our podcast. So yay, thank you so much for answering my and by the way, if any of you are ever guests, then you'll know that oftentimes you're getting a text message from me saying, "Hey, you want to be on the podcast?" And Leah, I'm so thankful. And let me before Leah answers the question, I want you all to know that I just met Leah Friday. And we are at a wonderful, absolutely amazing event for women. And so, we all talked about our personal and professional background. And I'm like, wait a minute. So Leah would be great to come on our podcast. And by the way, we're almost about to enter Women's Health Month. So I'm saying that this is our launch. Even though we're still in April, I'm saying this is our launch for Women's Health Month because of course finances are a part of our financial health is also important. So welcome, Leah. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing amazing and the weather is sunny. I'm hopeful about the wealth in my life.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm gonna ask a fun fact of if your finances today had a theme song, what would it be and why? Dr. Kane, I'm gonna start with you.
Oops. If it had a theme song, it would be the same theme song you heard for the program. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. Welcome to Pause for the Truth. Look at my stuff, and maybe you might not want to come here.
What about you, Leah? What would your theme song be regarding
Well,
your
yes, thank you for asking. So my mom sang. She sang to us the different scriptures, and she would wake us up with a loud soprano voice. Rise and shine, give God the glory. And that's where my name for my business comes from, Rise and Shine. I'm giving honor to my mom. And so that is definitely my theme song, is acknowledging the one who woke you up.
wow, well my theme song is got to give the people what they want.
Right.
And sometimes we have to give the people what they need, right, Dr. Kane, on this
That's it.
podcast. They
I
don't
was
know what they
thinking about
need.
it.
So by having, good guests like yourself to impart your knowledge and wisdom, that's what we're all about. So I'm going to go ahead and begin the conversation. But first, before I continue, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. Who is Leah Bush?
I am Leah Bush. I am from Jackson, Mississippi, but I have been here for over 20 years. So I guess I'm native Jacksonville now. But I was a school teacher for over 24 years in the classroom, and then COVID took me out wearing masks, and you were going to teach something in mask and having the children sit down. I was a middle school teacher.
Oh,
So for me to try to wrangle children, I mean, we didn't know what was going on. And at the time, the administration was like, go back into the classroom. And I was like, so, we all make money mistakes. And through my time, I've made money mistakes. And so just learning more and more and more, I got fully licensed, and now I'm a financial fiduciary advisor.
Oh, nice. Awesome. And oftentimes, and not for you, by the way, and I'm not talking about any of us, but oftentimes many folks, they grow up with picking up on the habits of their parents. If the parents were good about saving, they're good about saving. If the parents were good about spending and shopping, then sometimes we often pick up habits of our parents. And but the more we learn and the more we know, we have the opportunity to create our own legacy, create our own way of you know getting delving into this. So I know I asked you to specifically talk about financial health, but I kind of want you to first delve into, you're involved in a new an event that's happening soon. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I'm talking about the healing one, I believe, because to me, that's the foundation. Sometimes if we delve into other parts of our lives or take care of other parts of our lives, it can lead to growing the other parts of our lives healthier. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Black Women Do Heal is a national organization that is coming here to Jacksonville. And our debut is May 9th at the Nest co-working space down by the Riverside area. And so we're doing an event called Show Yourself Healing Stories. And so we'll be just talking as women. It's Mother's Day weekend. And so all women are involved. You don't have to be a mother. So if you want to bring your sister, your cousin, we're going to come and talk about mental health. Black Women Do Heal is an organization that we strive to tear down the mental stigma of mental health, and especially around women. We always get to be the strong Black woman, but our strength was not meant to harm us. It was meant to have us get that resilience to be able to be a blessing to our community. And so that's what we're talking about May 9th, from 6 to 10, telling stories, again, introducing ourselves to the community, to be a resource for mental health services.
And that's awesome, because I think about, and by the way, Leah, Dr. Kane is used to me doing it, but I speak of my own self. People talk about the things that they do when they're not happy or when they're dealing with a situation. Mine has been eating or shopping too much, spending money. So this whole thing, and I've been our resident registered dietitian has been trying to heal me of my eating habits, but hopefully you can help me tonight regarding finances. But what were some of the biggest challenges you faced with money early on, and how did you overcome them?
Yes. So I am the healing ambassador, financial healing ambassador for Black Women Do Heal. And we have these conversations in our what we call tribe, because the village takes a village to heal in community. So my origin is actually quite positive. My dad, my earliest memory is of my dad giving me change or a dollar to take down to give an offering. And so growing up in the church, you learn about, different money habits of saving and tithing. But I'm going to tell you what, this capitalist society
Mm.
has taught us that it is better to spend than to save. That's why nobody saves. That's what we were taught. A lot of people talk about, well, what we weren't taught, but what we were taught is how to spend. Everybody was told to go to school, get a good job, and work yourself to death. Okay, we can't continue that cycle. So we know how to work, we know how to spend, because that is what society taught us. For me in my house, we were savers, we were tithers, we were workers, but nobody really taught us how to save and invest, and then how our money can grow and work for us. And so during my journey as an adult, sidebar, I have a son. I have 5 kids, but I have a particular son who's outgoing, gregarious, and he thought, again, pastors' kids, teachers' kids get a bad rap, but he wanted to be, lack of better words, a class clown. I would talk to him every day. Hey, be good, do the things. Point is, I decided as a teacher, I would go teach at his school. Cut up if you want to. I'm right here.
Mm.
So I left the district, the school, Duval County School District, and went to a smaller school. When I left, they were like, do you want to take the money, or you want to, talk about retirement? Do you want to take the money, or do you want to leave it? I'm like, I'll take it. I didn't know any better. I was retiring in my 30s
Mm.
because I took the money out of my pension. As a teacher, that's one of the main things that we look forward to is our benefits. I lost my retirement in my 30s because of ignorance.
Hmm.
What you don't know will hurt you.
Hurt you. Yeah.
So that was the beginning of my financial journey. So again, we've all made mistakes. We all, have to then learn. And when you know better,
You do better.
it's time to do well. We
You
got to
should
put it
anyway.
in action and do better. And so that's part of the healing journey, is to figure out, why aren't my behaviors lining up with what I say I want? And then also the comfortability and the subconsciousness of, like you said, when we don't feel bad, we shop. When we feel good, we shop. When we're bored, we
We
shop.
shop or eat.
So we have to address those things.
Yeah.
I
And
can agree. You eat.
one of the things also, we don't have a conversation about money other than spending. I've known people throughout my life, particularly when I was a younger woman, and when my friends, and I'm not talking, if my friends listen, so I'm not talking about anybody in particular, so don't think I'm telling your story. I'll say my coworkers. Okay, my coworkers are listening too. Anywho,
Too late.
when people have children and they get their income tax check, right? They get those fat checks, and the first thing when you talk about living in a capitalistic society, the first thing we think about doing is what we're going to buy with that money. And we feel like we deserve a reward because we've been penny pinching throughout the year and we account for every dollar that we earn that typically goes back into the household. So when we get that chunk of money, then we look for, oh, this is great. I can buy me some crabs. I can buy me an outfit, get my nails done, hair done. And for some people who are lucky enough to get a particularly chunk of change, maybe they'll take a vacation, right? However, how do we change, though, the mindset of people when you talk about tithing? Okay, did you take 10% off and give it to your church if you're a member of a church? Did you take 10% off? And that might not be the amount, so correct me, 10% off to put in a savings account or an investment account. At least you are good about doing that. And then so you carve off pieces of the money instead of blowing the entire chunk of change. What are your thoughts on that, Leah?
Yes, there are many, many, many different ways to handle your money. The point of it is for you to be true to yourself and your values. Because
Mm,
where you're spending your money right now, that's what you value. Where
mm,
your treasure is. So if I'm spending
wow.
all my money on my children, they go to football practice. They're in this play. They're going here. I buy them clothes every week. Oh, this will look so cute on Junior. All your money out the door over the children. You look up
Mhm,
at 50 and you don't have any retirement.
mhm,
And then you're buying stuff for your grandkids. So the question is, what do you do? And one way is what you said, 10% to charity, your church, tithing, 10% to yourself. When people say pay yourself first, that's the 10% to savings. So your
mm.
future self will thank you. And then 10% to investing. I know I just cussed, but investing is a thing. And we need to learn more about it and not be afraid. Don't fear your future, fund your
Mm,
future.
I
So
like that.
that's one way you can do it and then live off 70% of our income. And for some people, they're living off 130% of their income. They don't have anything saved, nothing invested. They don't necessarily give, to charity or to good works. It's basically robbing Peter to pay Paul or check to check. And that's our existence. And then if we don't have enough, what are we going to do? Swipe, charge.
Credit cards. Yeah.
Now we're in debt.
Well,
I
just the
want
mere
to.
fact of spending more than what you bring in puts you in debt automatically.
Correct.
Uh, and well, I'm reserving an opinion about people that may say, because not everybody is of a religious origin, but what I do want to make sure people understand is when you spend that money, particularly when it's on frivolous things, that money's gone. Okay. You can wear out a pair of shoes, you wear out a pair of nails, you get that great reward from an automobile accident, and you spend that on going to get a brand new car to replace the car you had, or whatever it may be, without giving forethought to, as what you mentioned earlier, what do I do when I've gotten to my 50s and I've taken care of my kids and taken care of my grandkids. But when I get to my 60s, 70s, or whatever it may be, who's taking care of me? Okay. And you may not want your kid, and I'm saying this because I see it so often in my practice. A lot of women, I don't want my kids to bear the burden of taking care of me, and so on and so on. But you put that burden on taking care of you when you did not invest for you, okay, instead of just for those kids. And now those kids got to turn right back around, either put mom in a nursing home or dad in a nursing home in this case. Put them in a nursing home and leave them there because the government, hoping the government will take care of them, rather than um, having to pay out all the money that you bring in to take care of your parents. And sometimes people have anger about it. I'm just talking about what my patients say. They have anger about it because they wish mom or dad had did the right thing for themselves, so they wouldn't have that burden on them and their family because they don't got married, got a spouse, got kids, and now they got to worry about that the financial safety of their family. But mom or dad, okay, I'm not picking. I know it's we talking about women in particular, but mom or dad did not take care of themselves, and now you're putting that financial burden on your children.
Yeah, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about women in finance. So, to our listening audience, I'd like for you to answer this question in our chat. What's the best money advice you've ever received? What is the best money advice you've ever received? And mine was Leah. I remember years ago as a younger woman working, listening to another colleague, an older gentleman there who was saying, take advantage of the I work for the state, so they had deferred comp. Take advantage of the deferred comp. And first of all, who understands what all of that means, right? Let's even set we'll put that on the back burner. But what he said is you need to get out of debt first. But in the meantime, if you want to do something, put at least $15 away, right? $15 a pay period. You can always increase it, but first get out of debt. And so I think for me, it's you have to know where you are in order to know, you've got to know how much money you have coming in, what your expenses are. And generally people don't know that. And if you get horrible like me and you start setting up those automatic payments, and then you forget you got a subscription to this and a subscription to that, and then all of a sudden you're like, what, who is this, right? And so because I know I had to do that, I had to literally go through it and like, I don't need this, I don't need this, you know what I mean? And so I think we have to really start nowhere what what we talk about, what our numbers are as far as our blood pressure and cholesterol and blood sugar, but what are our numbers in terms of how much money do we bring in, what are our expenses? To me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that the way to start in order to get some financial freedom?
These are so good points that you guys are bringing up. And going back to what Dr. Kane said, you're talking about the sandwich generation. That's people like me that have children and parents we're helping taking care of, more specifically financially. And so because we are stretched so thin, there are no dollars to make the ends meet. And to your point, Ms. Jocelyn, you got to take an audit of where you are. But again, before you take the audit, the very first step is to know what you want. What do you
Mm,
want? What's the goal? What's the point? What's the dream? Do we
mm,
just have the dash in between our birth date and death date just to exist? Or
mm,
were we going to live on purpose? And so
mm,
when you're not spending frivolously and you're spending on purpose, love the kids. But the $5 to spend him on another pair of blue shoes, put the $5 away for the sweet baby. If you all have, a family trust, or if you have life insurance, get a policy on everybody in the family. Because sometimes we're drained and there's no money left because no one left anything, or you got the chunk of money like you were talking about and we don't know what we did with it. So just being honest with ourselves, figuring out what's the goal, what's the dream. Then, as you said, Ms. Jocelyn, take that audit of where you are now and what does it look like to prepare for the future. It's not so astronomical that you can't do it. If you count the cost, you'll figure out exactly how to get there. So, for instance, I teach my clients calendar based budgeting. because in a calendar, you got Juju's birthday over here, you got the cookout over here, you got the anniversary over here. And then when you take that all together, you can see where the money's going. You're already using a calendar. So you know your due dates. You put everything out in the open on the calendar. Everybody can see it. You don't have to say, baby, we don't have enough money to go to the movies. They see where the money go. We had 5 birthdays this month. Who knew? And you may not give it to the church, but if you're giving everybody a gift for their birthday, you're overspending on Christmas. You're spending it on charity.
And you got to remember some of these dates that we talk about, like birthdays and Mother's Days and all the different. I say Mother's Day, but not to pick on mothers. But the different holidays are basically things that the
Retail industry.
retail industries want you to do. And you're being influenced, sometimes made you feel guilty about what you do or don't do, but you're being influenced by their influence on commercialism, and marketing and so on and so on. The one thing I do want to say, and I've always said to my patients, and we can address what some of the questions that are coming in through. One thing I always say to patients is that, don't retire to die, retire to live.
Yeah.
And you can't live in an economy like ours, not to the degree that you want to, without having some money. So plan your retirement to live, not just waiting to die.
I think the thing that Leah said that I never thought about, Leah, until I got older, because you think about, when I looked at the decades of life relative to health, like at this decade of life, because I used to promote as a health educator, that's my background. I would promote to people what health screenings they should have at the different decades of life. But when you talk about the time in between, and they typically say this, by the way, at funerals, the the birth and the death and the line in between, like, right? But it was a point, and I can recall maybe when I was approaching 30, where I thought about, okay, so I went to college, started work, got the jobs, started working, building my career. All I thought about was getting an apartment. I didn't think about at that point getting a house. I got an apartment, and then it's like, okay, and my best friend became, I don't know if she became a realtor at that point in my 30s, where I bought my first house, but I didn't think about the retirement part until I got older, right? I remember, and I mentioned my former coworker, older gentleman, who talked to us about, and I'll say his name because he's a popular guy in Jacksonville. He probably doesn't like me calling him an older gentleman, but he was older than me. Tommy Chandler. He used to talk to the young folks at work about, make sure you get the deferred comp. That's something the state offers, a way to put away some money. But I really wasn't thinking about that. And I say that, I mentioned Tommy because we need to pass this knowledge on to pay. They say pay it forward. I'm like, go back, pay it forward in terms of the younger people. Talk to them about it. Because when you talk about what are you working for, what are you planning for, generally I can say that, and our audience can chime in. People don't generally, when we're younger, we don't think about putting away for retirement, right? We think about, you know, maybe where we're going to go this summer for vacation. We think about, um, what we want to do for the upcoming holidays. But to say in my 30s, some people are bright enough to think that way, but to start thinking about retiring. I remember I met a gentleman in my early 30s who was telling, we were all about the same age as volunteers with the Urban League. And he was talking about he was going to retire at age 44. And I'm like, where did he get that from? Why age 44? Right? He said he just knew he was working then to be retired at age 44, because he said he wanted to make sure that he was healthy, like you said, Dr. Kane, and can enjoy his life like that. So tell us, how do you talk to people about figuring out what it is that in between the birth and death, that other than the going shopping for a good sale.
Yes, yes, yes. So, like I said, the process begins with knowing what you want. Some of us don't know what we want. That's why we're chasing after everything else. We see, someone online and we see what they're doing. Oh, they're doing that. Oh, I think I want to do that too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What do you want? What do you want? Do you want to work for the rest of your life or do you want to have enough money saved? Some people don't want to retire. My dad is 76 years old and he still works full time because he wants to. I said, Daddy, why are you doing, mowing grass? Because he wants to. Let the man live. And so, what does your retirement look like? You can't decide your numbers based on someone else. And I saw a question in the chat that said, well, when should we start teaching? You start teaching at the very time that they can count. Because some kids, when you ask them how much stuff costs, they have no idea. Well, can't you just get that plastic card out? They don't understand that that's not money. So, again, teaching children what money is, how much things cost compared to something else. So, for instance, if you want to buy tennis shoes, now tennis shoes are very expensive. These tennis
Even
shoes with the
more so
name
now.
brand on,
Even more so now. But go. I'm sorry.
well, you're good. But so kind of comparing different things. When you go to the grocery store, why are we buying organic versus not organic? How much do all of that cost? So again, just see, how you can, as one of the people said in the chat, everyday life, helping them, you letting them help you shop. Why is this cereal more expensive to the other cereal? Let them know you have a budget. We're only spending $100 at the store. If you go to the store hungry, mistake, because you end up buying too much. So let's just go through the process. The financial process is hopes, plans, and dreams. What do you
Mm-hmm.
hope for? What are you trying to do with your life? Are you trying to live and work until you're tired? Like what does that look like? Because retirement looks like, for me, work optional. If I want to work, I can work, but if I want to go sit down somewhere, go out of the country for a whole month, I want to be able to do that. But everybody's looks different. Goals, plans, and dreams. Like you said, audit what you're doing. Make sure you're living on less than you bring in. And if you have expensive taste, that means you need to work on your cash flow. So that is part of budgeting. How can I bring in more cash? How can I do something to bring in more? And I'm not saying work harder. I'm saying, so let me give you an example. When I was a young mom, I would braid my daughter's hair. Some people don't know how to braid. I would get compliments on my daughter's hair, and the other mothers would say, "Hey, can you braid my daughter's hair?" Absolutely, for a price.
That will be me.
So when I braided my daughter's hair, I braided other little girls' hair and got paid. It wasn't anything, it was hair day. So it wasn't any more of me. It wasn't a second job. But even before gig economy was popular, what do you do that brings people joy? Do you bake? Do you cook? Do you know how to wash a car very well because you detail your, like, what is it that you can do that you can have an extra source of income, not to spend, but to make your dollars stretch, to save, to invest. So okay, pause. First of all, what do you want to do? Take an inventory of what you're doing. Make sure you have the cash flow. Then you need to do risk mitigation. Sometimes we have a lot of money, but then when something happens, all the money's gone. Someone passed away. You have to fly out of town to go to that funeral. The refrigerator broke. You need 4 tires. Those are called emergencies, and you need an emergency fund. A
Mm-hmm.
credit card is not an emergency fund.
Since when?
Well, it can be as long as you use it responsibly. But many of
I'm
us don't.
teasing.
Many of us don't. So an
True.
emergency fund, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
An emergency fund for risk mitigation. Then you want to look at investing. So what is that thing that he was telling you about? Basically, your company has a process to save for retirement. So you need to figure that process out. That's your
Mhm,
responsibility. You're
mhm,
working there, get to know your benefits. What benefits do you have? What's the point of working a job or being somewhere and you have no
mhm,
idea how the benefits work?
mhm, mhm.
Point, if they have a matching to your retirement, match it. That's free money.
Exactly.
So if they do 3%, you do 3%. You want to make sure you get all the monies, all the benefits that you have access to. You can also create your own pension. If you're a
Hmm.
business owner, you can start saving for your retirement and it's a tax write off.
What? Wait a minute now. Delve into that a little bit more.
So there's such thing called solo 401ks. You can also do a SEP IRA. Those are different products that you can get as a business owner to decrease your taxes because your business is paying for your retirement. And
Hmm.
so it's just a matter of you, again, we talk about financial literacy, and that's part of why we're here now. But it's an ongoing process. You have to be a lifelong learner because things
Yeah.
change. You know, before we got on, Dr. Kaney and I were talking about the economy and the current administration, everything that's going on. You can't be shaken by that. You have to know your plan. I talked to a professional. When I lost my retirement, I got a professional involved. And that's just me and that's my philosophy. I do now, but back then I didn't look at numbers every day. To say that I'm gonna invest, I personally don't think that's wise. But after you get those numbers right with your retirement investing, you can also invest just to invest. So retirement investing, investing for investing, and then your will and trust. So that's the timeline or the process of getting your house in order, making sure your personal finances are organized and you're keeping track of it. I would say a quarterly review, a quarterly audit.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, for women just starting to take control of their finances, what are the first three things you recommend they do?
Can I ask? Can I say something real quick before we get there? Because I got to respond to something you said about the self-employed, so individual. You can also take that 401k. Okay, when you put that kind of monies into it, and you can borrow against it, pay it back because you're paying back to yourself. I'm talking about for those solo business owners. You can pay it back to yourself. I'm not saying that you need to do it, but in times when you may need to do it, you can borrow against it and you paying it back. And that interest you're paying it to yourself instead of paying it to ABC Loan Company or your credit union or your bank or anybody else, in terms of when you do a car or something like that. Long as you make sure you go back and pay it, which you'll be penalized if you don't. So
Yeah, that is one way if you need access to capital, but then there's
yes, you do.
also whole life insurance. And I know that's a dirty word for some people, but there are different products out there now. You have, index universal life products, which is a IUL. You've heard a lot about that probably. But there's also whole life products where you can get interest on it as well, and you can borrow from yourself. You don't have to have perfect credit, borrow from yourself and pay yourself back. So there are many different ways to grow your wealth. To answer your question, Ms. Jocelyn, where should we start? I really can't stress enough that if you GPS, if you don't know where you're going, you won't get there, or any road will take you. Your plans, hopes, and dreams have to be first. Where are you going? What is your goals? Once you figure out what you want to do and what life looks like, and it's deep, It's a deep process of asking yourself,
What-
sitting with yourself, grounding yourself. I'm sorry.
You went away. We couldn't hear you for a second.
Oh, okay, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. It's a deep process of grounding yourself, making sure that you're being true to yourself. The reason why our behavior with money isn't congruent is because we're not aligned. We're
Mm.
doing things just to do them, but it's not part of our true value of what we truly believe should be going on. So that right there is a mindset shift that we have to make in order for our goals and dreams to be reached. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people don't like planning because they feel like they'll never get there.
Yeah. I think about again, looking back at the stages of life, you think about when I was younger, I thought about I didn't have any children because some people will think, well, I want to put aside money aside so my children can go to college. For me, it was putting money aside to buy my first home. And I did that. And then I bought my second home, right? And then the other part of it simultaneously is okay, now that I have my home, I need to have some money aside for emergencies if something goes wrong in the home. And I think it's evolving is my point, because then looking at it as big picture, then at some point during that same time frame, it is making sure that I am putting money aside so that I can retire. And I remember telling my niece this, one of my nieces, that you have to have a plan as far as that, because I retired. A lot of companies don't offer the pensions like I was blessed to get, right? You have to put your own money aside. And so, again, I think people have to think what their life is right now. When you talk about your hope, your dreams, my hope right now is I wake up tomorrow. It's also my dream. You know what I mean? So that's why,
Yeah.
and I say that because when you're younger, it is to make sure that, I was talking to a friend the other day and she said she want to make sure she's around for her grandchildren when they graduate from high school. But to put them, to connect it to your finances then is to a good have your estate planning, a trust or a will, so that when the good Lord takes you home, your assets won't go back to the state, and your family
Yes.
members won't be in probate court arguing with one another, right? So, no, being realistic, no matter how much you have, you still want it to go to your family and not to the state that you live in, right? So, getting a will or a trust, and also a good insurance policy, like you said, if getting an insurance policy, if you can afford it, getting the right one. And if you don't know who to talk to, there are some good insurance brokers out there, um, we've had some on our program in the past to talk to you about buying insurance, because that's another way that some people have gained wealth. So I think when you think about it, to our listening audience, which is varied, you think about where you are now. If you're a young person, young parent, then you're obviously thinking about your children, the college fund or whatever. Or if you live in an apartment or renting, then what you may be thinking about at that moment is putting money aside for a house. So, I like what you said, and not just about if you're able to take your kids to Disney World this summer. That's good, but you have to think long term. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about women and finances. And so hopefully you have thought about finances as far as your family is concerned. I want to also ask you all another question. How has your mindset about money changed over the past year? To our audience, is that associated with the tariffs or what's happening in the government? Or just in general, how has your mindset about money changed over the past year?
If so,
What'd you say?
if it has changed.
Yeah, if it has changed. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know.
So I would say definitely um going through those steps, let's take me as a test case. Um, Mom, daughter, sister, friend, 50 years old, no retirement savings. Okay, what do you do? What's the first step? Let's just say your plans, hopes, and dreams. I want to be able to go visit my family, go to family reunions. I like to travel. Okay. So here's the caveat: if you're going to travel, what are you going to sacrifice? Are you eating out every day and buying clothes and?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but do you have enough money for that? Count the cost. Well, my trip to visit my sister is going to cost $500. I'm going to drive. The trip to visit my uncle is $1,000. $1,500 right there.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing in the meantime? The practicality of it.
Yeah.
Are we cooking at home? So we're saving that $20 a
Mm-hmm.
day so that we can do the things that we truly value. And that's what I was saying about the deep work. What do you really want? Don't be mad because you can't go to the family union. You knew it was this summer. How long we been planning this?
No, they knew last summer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they knew last summer. I like that though, Leah. That's so true. Because you think about, and that's a good point to our audience. If you know that the family reunion is in August, right? How many weeks away? We'll say that's 12 weeks. If you spend $20 a week on
A day, a day.
a day eating out, okay, I'll say a day eating out, and you think about that's $140 a week times 12 weeks. Okay, Dr. Kane, I'm gonna let you do the math. And so you think about
Is you
100,
actually mad? But
I mean,
okay. That's
140
about
a week,
1,500 and some change.
right? There goes your money for the family reunion in August. But to
Yeah.
put it, to put that easy, that's an easy way to talk to people about, to let them see where their money is going. Maybe you can't go to the nail salon every month. Maybe you make that sacrifice and do your own nails, because we didn't grow up. Some of us did not grow up going to the nail salon. Yeah, get your nail salon all right. You can get you some polish and emery board and and some Johnson's foot soap and get your thing, your manicure and whatever at home and
Put
pedicure at
them
home.
rusty feet.
No, I'm just saying, but it's so true. Going to Starbucks. Maybe you can't go to Starbucks 5 days a week, but cut it down to 2 days a week. But that is so true and so practical, a way to gain control of your money. So you hope, that's a hope. Isn't that a hope? Hope to go to the
Yes.
family reunion.
Yes.
Give me an example of what a dream might be. Is that getting a home?
Yeah, definitely. A dream could be, again, something that you really want. I found with this younger generation, they have no aspirations to purchase a home. They don't want to be homeowners because it's too expensive, and they like to be mobile, move around. They want to be in this city one day and another city another day. So, again, getting in touch with what you really want. I saw someone was saying, well, don't get a new car, get a house. I want a BMW. Like it's whatever you want. What is it that you want? That's why it's so important to get there. So with that being said, a dream is whatever that deep desire. Maybe you want to be decked head to toe. I'm not a name brand kind of person, but maybe it's Gucci, maybe it's Prada. Whatever it is that you want, that's your dream. That's your stretch goal. If you want to be a doctor without student loan debt, you can pay the bills as they come. You don't have to be in debt. There's scholarships. They're like, a lot of people feel like, well, if I go to school, it's going to cost this much. It's very, very expensive. But there are also other people who work themselves through school.
Yeah.
But that brings up a point. It's not just about what you want. You need to juxtapose that to what you need. And a lot of people don't look at what they really need. I mean, you need a place to hold. You need a place to live in. Need a roof over your head. Now, how you pay for that roof over your head? You could rent for somebody and never see that money come back to you ever again. Just opposed to, you could also look to save. You can stay like my kids, if they want to stay with me, they can while they're saving monies to go and strive for that home ownership, saving monies along that line because they still need somewhere to stay. Okay, and not just need that new BMW we talked about, or need some of this other, or not need, want that new BMW we talked about, and
Yeah.
so on and so on and so on.
And like I said, the dreams are different from everybody. Maybe it's your dream. My father is an investor, and he had. I'm gonna tell you, I won't tell all his business, but as a Black community, some of us are looking for getting into the investment game, and it is risky to, support Bubba down the street with Bubba's barbecue. But at the same time, that is another way to investing in our community. Shop Black, find the different restaurants, find the different things that can support our community and have our dollars circulate in our community. Getting back to women and wealth and empowerment, it's empowering to know that I can go to whatever store I want to buy and buy that bag or whatever it is. That can be a dream of mine. I've always wanted to have whatever it is. So
Mm-hmm.
again, just being true to yourself. My point is to buy the bag, the outfit, and go overseas. Can you afford that? I mean, Jill might be able to, or Jaquana might be able to, but what about your pockets? And so I just want us to be realistic and take inventory for ourselves. I have a millionaire friend who's been in the same house since she moved to Jacksonville. Like, why we moving? Why we going over here to the beach? Just because I can afford it? Yeah, I can afford it. That's why I'm staying where I am. So don't chase after someone
Mm.
else's dreams. Chase yours.
Forget
Or
about
be
the Joneses.
influenced, or be influenced by others. A lot of young people, and not just young people. I'm not gonna, because Tyrone says we always talk about bash young people, but a lot of people are influenced by influencers on social media. Become your own influencer. And the one thing, by the way, that we kind of touched on but didn't, that was a real particular thing during the pandemic, is when folks started being laid off and they had no backup plan. So that it was at that point that many people got a side hustle, and so they work every day, but they also were started growing their own on the side, so that they were not caught in a position to be without during the pandemic. We've often said on this podcast, another disease can happen at any moment, and we get back to that. And right now it might be tariffs. And I read online, somebody texted to me, and I read online that UPS is laying off because Amazon, their biggest customer, they're not making as much money. I guess people are not shopping like they had been, or prices are going up and people are just not wanting to pay the extra money. So, having that side hustle. I know some people who have three hustles, right? And because it's because they didn't like being in the position of having to rely on the government for that little, what were the people getting, $1,200 a month or something like that, and realizing that it was not a good feeling, not knowing where their next meal were coming from. And a few months ago we were talking about the cost of eggs, and I know some people went and got some chickens, because again, people are still are thinking smart. Some people are thinking smart about their money, and being realistic about the times that we're in. So, what systemic changes do you believe are necessary to create a more financially equitable future for women? And Dr. Kane, I want you to answer that too. Some systemic changes you believe are necessary to create a more financially equitable future. and not just for women, just for our communities in general. I like what you said about investing in the businesses in your community.
Yes. So, one thing, as you said, we have to have more than one source of income, more than one resource. And we can't think about what the resource is when we're laid off. So, number one, that emergency fund should be enough to pay all of your bills, um, for at least 6 months. Some people say a year because of that COVID scenario. Some people were out of a job for more than they thought. And so,
Mhm.
and when you think about it, your expenses, let's just say, $3,000 a month covers all your expenses. And you may be thinking, oh, that doesn't even cover my expenses. Okay, back to the audit. Where is your money going? But anyway, let's just say 3,000. Well, 3,000 times 10 months is $30,000. So it's like, do we have access to that anywhere? And whole life policies, or IULs, permanent policies, you can put money into and have it grow. It's not just sitting there. There are other places that you can put your money where it can grow and the money's working for you. So what systemically do we need to do? Again, is to not overspend. Just because the commercials say spend, 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 we have to take that self-assessment and say, this isn't working. Is that working for you? That's not working. So we have to regroup, get that life insurance policy, teach our children, what it's for, or you can fund the trust with that life insurance policy, and you dictate from the grave where that money goes. They can't spend it all at one time because you can ration it out. You'll get 100,000 to pay for school. You'll get another 100,000 for a down payment on the house. You'll get the rest of it when you turn 35, and then some of it's going to the next generation. So it just depends on our mindset shifting to, this cannot continue. It is not working for us for every generation to start over. For people like me who are sandwiched in between, you realize that taking care of your parents and taking care of your children is a stretch. You
Mhm.
do something about it. You have life insurance so this cycle doesn't continue.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Kane, what about you? What do you think? What's the systemic change do you believe is necessary to create a more financially equitable future?
I think right now, with the things that we're going through, and I'm looking at what we're going through, and then looking back on how it was back in, I'm an old folk, so back in the pre 60s, especially, let me say pre 70s for sure, ownership makes a huge difference. And ownership in what you do, what business you are participating in makes a huge difference. You're not at the whim or the uh, or at the what your employer may say. Today your employer may like you, tomorrow they may not like you, you're fired. Okay, for no reason or any reason. Okay, and so the more independent you can be as best as you can, the more independent that you can be, whether it's because you went and got the insurance policy that you're making reference to, by which I can also kind of say, what do we do for older folks with that same strategy? We can't get that kind of insurance policy, IUL, or there may be some hesitance about distributing. But the bottom line is independence on what you can do in terms of making your own monies and not being dependent just on employment by someone else makes a huge difference. I know that might not be for everybody, okay, but you can go and learn on how to run a business, in particular something that you're good at. So you need to I think we just need to get out there and start thinking about more independence and spending within the people, spending monies to the people that going to spend money back with you if you're into that kind of business, especially. Once you send that money outside the neighborhood, and there's other people that look like you that would be happy to purchase your products, your services, whatever it may be. Once you spend that money out there, why would you want to go and participate in in a financial industry, i.e., non-black industry, that we looking at, or you want to spend money out there, and that money goes to the other people and not back within your people who will be maybe spending money with you. So you got to really think about how you spend your money and where you spend your money at. Not just how, but where you spend it at. And also become very learned as to um, how to do certain things for yourself. My kids, y'all mentioned earlier about women and and this is about women and what they do. One thing I try to teach all my girls is how not. And someone mentioned it on they mentioned it in um, uh, the, the
Chat.
the chat box. They mentioned in the chat box about making sure that we understand things and know how we spend our money. You go out there. One thing you want men, I'm talking men that may be listening right now, you need to teach some of the ladies, and some of them may know, but you need to teach them about some of the things that need to be that you traditionally see men do, the cost and how to determine whether or not you're paying a fair price for it. My kids, I made sure they understood what I was doing when I was looking at getting cars fixed. Nobody comes in and charge you $1,000 for a brake service, or make you go get a brand new tire for $1,000 by itself, or anything along that. Just teaching them some common sense items that us men think about, but not necessarily women think about it, because maybe their dad did it for them, like I did for my kids, but I still made sure they understood what it meant about it. And then also making sure they get educated as to buying property, and making sure that you, like what one of our listeners are showing now, recirculate that money in the black community. So it's a lot of things that men can come along, teach their daughters when they're at young age. And this is no detriment to women, because there's a lot of things that you can teach your sons, but there's also a lot of things we can teach our daughters. And we need to go out and help teach them how to survive in a man's world where men are trying to take advantage of women by whatever means necessary.
So I want to pose these to you all. I know we're a little over, but I just have to say, when we talk about systemic examples of systemic changes, education system reform, universal financial literacy curriculum from K through 12 to teach budgeting, saving, credit and investing, workforce development and labor equity, living wage laws, paid family leave and sick days, apprenticeship and career pathway programs, banking and credit access, expansion of community development financial institutions to provide fair banking options, regulation of predatory lending, tax system reform, progressive tax policies that reduce the burden on low and middle income families, child tax credits and earned income tax credits made permanent and more accessible, wealth building opportunities like down payment assistance and first time home buyer programs for historically excluded groups, universal retirement savings accounts with employer or government matches, support for small business ownership, including access to capital, mentorship, and government contracts, health and housing policy, affordable housing policies that curb gentrification and displacement, policy accountability and data transparency. So we really have to think about, not just the simple things, but also when we talk about building healthy communities from the inside out. Leah, I asked you to do an hour, and I know we've gone over, but as we are nearing the end of the show, thank you so much for answering my text. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. But we do like to give our podcast guests an opportunity to share their final thoughts. And in your final thoughts, please announce your upcoming events again so that our audience, and we will make sure we post them on our website. But give us your final thoughts regarding today's topic and anything else that you wanted to say that we didn't give you a chance to say. Take it away.
Thank you. Once again, I am Leah Bush, the financial thought partner. I help you think to and through retirement. And so, as a financial fiduciary, it's by law and by my own principles and values to do the right thing by you. And what I'm finding about empowering women is giving them the opportunity to create their own family bank. We talked about, saw access to capital and buying a home and leaving a legacy for our kids is talked about, but a lot of times we don't know how to do it. And one way that you can do it is by having these conversations and going through every day, teaching the young people how to live life on a day-to-day basis, that they should not be living check to check, that they should have more than enough so that they're able to be generous. But going back to the family bank, it's a concept where it is a life insurance policy where you're adding more money than the actual premium so that that money can grow. It grows faster than the normal cash value policy, and you're able to borrow against it. Take it to one more level. If you're creating it with your family, you talked about the older people can't qualify. Well, you can get it on one of your younger cousins or a niece or nephew or somebody in the family that's younger, but everybody contributes. That way it grows further. But again, you have to put caveat, and this isn't for every family. That's don't say I'm doing it for every
Yep,
family.
yep, I got you.
But the family that can come up with a legally binding contract and decide what is the money for. Again, going back to your plans, hopes, and dreams, and I'm wrapping it up. Is it for home buying? We're getting this life insurance policy, this family bank, so that anybody who needs a down payment up to whatever the pricing it is can have that down payment. Is it only for the people who contributed? Is it, what I'm saying? So put those parameters around it, but we have to start thinking outside the box. We can no longer continue the way we are. Is that working for you? The answer is no. My very next event is this Saturday, March 3rd. We pray at the beach. It's Sunrise Pray. Again, the name of my company is Rise and Shine Services, and we'll be at Jack's Beach on 6th Avenue South and 1st Street. Then May 9th, for Mother's Day, there are two events. There's a Medicare workshop at 5 o'clock, and then there's Healing Stories at 6 to 10 at the Nest. Thank you so much. I really thoroughly enjoyed myself, and you can reach me at my name, at Leah R. Bush, on all the socials. So Facebook, I say all. I'm only on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and stick around, Leah. Dr. Kane, what are your, and that's, you said March 3rd, but May 3rd.
No,
Hopefully our audience
May.
know
I
that.
always say March. It is. It's May 3rd and then May 9th.
Don't back
Sorry.
up this crazy year, Leah. Please don't. Dr. Kane, what are your final thoughts?
Be quick as I can. With all that's going on in DC, we need to look at the short and long, look at our short and long term goals. Okay, especially in this atmosphere that we're dealing with. Learn something about independence, about being independent from others. But also be dependent on others. Okay, in terms of some things that you need to do, and maybe education, like with mom, dad, whomever can teach you some things. That's where your dependency lies. Not so much about a financial dependency on anybody. I don't want women dependent on absolutely 100% dependent on their husband, or vice versa. I really like for them, if they're married, to work together and achieve the same goal. But as Ms. Bush mentioned, they need to identify what those goals are and how they want to together work toward those goals. Okay. And then the last thing is, if all others, I'm not going to say all others fail, but one of the things you most certainly need to do, for those especially who don't know, and sometimes for those who think they know everything, is seek professional knowledge. Okay. That's what we hear today. And some of the other guests that we've had on in the past, and sometimes it's some of your friends who know stuff, and so on and so on. Seek that professional knowledge while you check with others that have been experiencing some of the things or have experienced some of the same thing you have. May not be mom, may not be dad, because mom and dad may not be around, but it could be an uncle, an aunt, It could be a good friend. If you happen to be a good friend of Miss Bush, then you got a good advisor. So I think what we have to start looking outside the box, looking to others to help guide you. But you got to remember some of the same points we mentioned earlier this evening, and that is take inventory, make a decision on what you want, but also make a decision and form an ideology of what you need. Want versus need, when that equation adds up, it will be what you get at the end of the day.
Thank you, Dr. Ken, and thank you, LaShawn, for your thoughts and comments. Boy, what an inspiring and insightful conversation today. Thank you so much, Leah, for sharing your wisdom, your journey, and so many practical steps we can all take to own our financial futures. To our listeners, remember, building wealth isn't just about dollars and cents. It's about choices, confidence, and community. Whether you're just starting your financial journey or looking to level up, the most important thing is to take that first step, no matter how small. And of course, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, and share this conversation not only with a woman in your life, but with others who are ready to step into their financial power. Thank you, Leah. Thank you all for tuning in to Pause for the Truth. Have a good evening.
We appreciate you spending time with us on Pause for the Truth. Ms. Jocelyn Turner and Dr. Rogers Kane are grateful for your support. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, catch us live on Twitch, and most importantly, subscribe on YouTube. A big shout out to Tyrone Jackson at Call Tyrone IT Services for keeping us connected. Join us every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more enlightening discussions. Thanks, and see you next week.